Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and the top 100 continues with 20 through 11. This is the second last in the series. We're almost done here, and then we'll be back next year, and we'll have other lists, and somewhere through 2022 we'll have the top 10 games of 2021. I like to wait a little bit into the year just because it takes a while to actually get them all played. I don't get them all played, I just get a bunch of them played. We're getting sidetracked, which is par for the course, but let's go ahead and get into this. Starting off the bat, there's going to be 10 games in this list because, you know, it's 20 through 11. 2 of them are new to me. They are games that I have not played in the past until this past year, but they're still games that managed to break their way into the top 10. I think we may have, I don't know what's actually, I was going to project towards what's in the next 10, but I don't actually remember offhand. We shall see. 5 of these are Kickstarter games, although a bunch of them do not feel like Kickstarter games. Actually, there's a possibility that 6 of them are Kickstarter games. I have to double check. But either way, a bunch of these do not feel like Kickstarter games, but we'll go ahead and get to that. And as usual, my ranking methodology is using PubMeeple. I basically sort my games into general rankings, sort those individual rankings into PubMeeple, my 5s, my 4s, my 3s, and then from there reorder as necessary because ultimately I get to decide what's my top 10, even though PubMeeple does do a fantastic job of laying the groundwork. From there, let's go ahead and get on into this. Starting off with my number 20, the first one on this list that is new to me, and the one that might be a Kickstarter, I don't actually remember. This is Viticulture by Stonemaier Games. A game that, despite being new to me, is not by any means cult of the new. This is a game that has been around for quite some time. This is a game I ignored because I did not like the artwork or the graphic design. Nothing about the game compelled me. The theme, the wine making, okay, great. The board never pulled me in. It's grown on me having played it, but it didn't pull me in back then. The art of the actual box and design and all that stuff, and it's an older design, and Stonemaier games in general have always been okay to me. They have never been amazing, and so Viticulture is a game I pushed off playing for a long time. Now, I did mention this, I think, is a Kickstarter. I could be wrong, but still, this one's old enough that my assumption is this was a Kickstarter from before Stonemaier Games got off Kickstarter. I actually don't remember or know. I'm just going by the date of when this came out and the fact that Stonemaier Games used to do all their games through Kickstarter. So, maybe this is the 6th Kickstarter, I don't particularly know. But with that, Viticulture is a worker placement game. It's a worker placement game about building wines, effectively. Not building wines, making wine. And so there's a bunch of actions you can take, but the innovative part of this game is that there's seasons of worker placement. Now, the expansion adds more. I do have Tuscany in the box, but even the base game has 2 seasons. The Tuscany expands to 4 seasons. The idea being that you get these workers to use, and then every single round you have a choice. Do you save them for the season? Do you use them in the season, or do you save them for the next season, or the next season, or the next season if you're playing with Tuscany? And that offers an interesting choice because it's not like I have 3 workers per season. I might have 3 workers for the whole year, and which seasons I choose to use them in is important, and we only go to the next season once we're done with this season. Which means someone who's using them all now might have multiple opportunities to place, while I patiently wait, hoping to cash them in winter, or spring, or fall, or whatever it is. And so it offers an interesting aspect to the game, in addition to the fact that the core gameplay itself is solid in and of itself. I really like Tuscany. I really like Viticulture. I like Tuscany as well. I have a bunch of the other card pack expansions for the game. I've upgraded this. I don't think I've gotten an insert for it yet. I need to get an insert, but I've upgraded with everything else, with metal coins, with pieces, with stickers, with all these things, because it is a game that I really enjoy. New to me this year, but I have something like 10 plays under my belt already. It is a solid game from Stonemaier Games, and this is my number 20 of all time. New to me, and I do have to do a review for this at some point, but that is Viticulture from Stonemaier Games. Next up is a game that is far from new to me. This is a game I've had for quite some time, and this is Tak. Another game that does not feel like a Kickstarter, but is. Technically, Tak is a Kickstarter from Cheap Ass Games, if I'm not mistaken, and one that I really always have to remind myself that this is a Kickstarter game. But Tak, at its core, is an abstract game. It's an abstract puzzle of trying to move pieces around the board. It is one of the best, not one of the best, one of the best. I have to say one of the best because there are so many abstract games that I actually get to play that are really solid, from Santorini to Mythic Mischief. Tak is one of the best. I think is the highest abstract I have on my list this year. But Tak is amazing. Tak is head-to-head opponents trying to get in each other's minds as you think through these simple elements of how to play this game. The game has a simple element of escalation as you teach the game. At first, you're trying to build a network, getting from one side to the other, or getting from either side. There's not your side and their side, there's just getting from a side to the other side in an uninterrupted string of your pieces. That's simple. Lots of games do that. But then Tak takes it up a notch by adding these blocker pieces. Pieces you can use to block your opponent and get in the way. They don't help you, they don't count for you, but they do count against getting in your opponent, which is amazing. And then again, TAC steps it up a notch. They're adding a capstone piece that will knock down the blocker, allowing you to, in one move, start knocking over what players are doing and get in their way and setting up that pathway. And then TAC also offers a sense of escalation in the size of the grid you're playing on, from 3x3 all the way up to a 6x6 grid. And then we haven't even talked about the best part about moving stacks of pieces. This is not a game where you put down a piece, put down a piece, put down a piece, put down a piece. This is a game where you put down a piece, then you put it on top of your piece, you move your piece on top, you move my piece on top, and then suddenly I am moving the entire stack across the board, dropping off pieces along the way, which is a fascinating mechanic that works particularly well for the objective you're going for in TAC. It is wonderful, it is delightful. It's based on the book from Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind, I want to say, The Way of Kings, Name of the Wind, something like that. Maybe one's the name of the book, one's the trilogy, I don't really remember. What I do remember is it's not finished yet, so I haven't bothered starting the series. But they talk about a game called TAC in the book, and so Patrick Rothfuss combined with James Ernest, they worked together, I believe James Ernest, one of those two, they worked together to create this game, and not only is it a decent game based off an IP, it is one of the best abstract games I own, and that is TAC. This one was 28 last year, and has only grown for me. No particular reason, but I will say this one frequently, over the years that I've had this one, this sees play time and time again. This is the kind of game you pull out to fill a 10-minute time slot, and then next thing you know, it's 40 minutes later, and you've played 5-6 games and you're only just getting started. Next up at number 18 we have the second and last new to me game on this particular segment of games, and that is Wild Assent. Wild Assent from Lazy Squire Games. This is a game that I do wonder where it will end up next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. You see, it's a campaign game. Campaign games in general have had a harder time sticking around for me. I tend to love what they are offering, love what they're presenting, and at the end of the day, I have to mentally jump back into it. I have to mentally be like, okay, I'm up to game 6, and what was I doing? Where was I up to? I either have to play the entire campaign in sequence, which is rare for it to happen, or alternatively, I have to just have that mental energy to jump in where I left off and feel like I'm actually like picking up what was going on. It's a separate problem. We'll talk about it some other time. I actually talk about it all the time. It's a real problem. But either way, Wild Assent semi-beats that by offering only 10 missions as the campaign, so it still has the problem, but it's not nearly as bad. And when you combine that with the gameplay that I adore, the gameplay elements of the way you build up your encampment, the way you slowly level up your characters, you have 4 seekers that are running around the wilds trying to hunt these creatures and or capture these creatures. Killing them offers rewards, so does capturing them. You're going to need that gold in order to up the level of your encampment and get more workers, more items, more goods, more everything. Doing that across 10 campaigns as the wilds slowly grow and threaten around you, it offers a puzzle of how to upgrade your characters. And there's so many characters. If you have the expansion content for this game, there's so much character variability to Wild Assent. There's a ton of ways you can try to build out your own core group, as well as the various workers you'll get, as well as the various items you'll get. Everything is offering you a new way to interact with the wilds, a new way to try to survive, or just try not to die, honestly. But it's a game that I really like the core mechanisms of the gameplay. It is simple, it is to the point. The enemy AI is a little on the lighter side. If you're someone who's coming to this from Kingdom Death Monster or some other game, you may find the enemy AI to be anticlimactic or disappointing. It's not a very complex AI, but it's an AI that's still threatening, that still works, that still provides enough of a puzzle that I want to dive in and attempt to survive throughout the 10 campaign arc of Wild Assent. The expansion, Wild Assent Levon Rising, offers only, it's not out yet, but the expansion Wild Assent Levon Rising offers a narrative pathway that will only make this more intriguing to me. But at the end of the day, for me, the combination of gameplay of Wild Assent that I really enjoy, combined with an accessible campaign, still gets dinged for being a campaign. It is still a game that I don't pull it off the shelf when I want to play a game. I pull it off the shelf when I am ready for commitment, which means I've only gone through this full campaign. I've gone through the full campaign once, that's 10 games right there. I've played Levon Rising, the 3 gameplays of that, and I've played, I think, 2 other gameplays. So a total of 15 plays, if I'm not mistaken, of Wild Assent in this past year, which is a lot. But the next time I want to dive into it, I have to be ready for that 10-game commitment, which is why I wonder where it lies. While I love it for right now, while I enjoy it for right now, and while the gameplay will continuously have me enchanted, at the end of the day, things that don't get played do tend to slip and eventually leave my collection as well, although I don't think that's a fear of leaving my collection. I just wonder where it ranks next year. Next up, and this is my number 18, new to me, and another Kickstarter game. So for 3 for 3 on Kickstarter games, if Viticulture is Kickstarter. Next up, we have Kemet, another Kickstarter game, although this one I do not count as a Kickstarter game. You see, my criteria for games is if they were a game first and then a Kickstarter, then I don't consider it a Kickstarter game. So Kemet I am not counting as a Kickstarter game, even though Blood and Sand technically is. See, Blood and Sand is the newest version of Kemet that went to Kickstarter, I want to say in 2020. Yeah, that sounds right. 2020 went to Kickstarter, already delivered, and Blood and Sand, it doesn't offer any core, innovative, amazing changes over the original Kemet. Honestly, my opinion of having played Blood and Sand, my opinion of Kemet is that if you have and like Kemet, you do not need to upgrade. If you do upgrade, there are some perks, there's some the trays are fantastic in terms of laying out your tiles and having those accessible. If you want that fourth power, the fifth power, the new power tiles, then yes, of course, you'll need to get this version. But otherwise, Kemet is and was an amazing experience. Kemet for me was my number 24 last year. It was my number 13 the year before that, and it's settled somewhere in the middle at number 17 for right now. It's a game that still sees play, still offers fantastic combinations of powers. You see, the core gameplay of Kemet that compels me and pulls me in is the building of your asymmetric faction in this area control game. The core idea is you're going head to head, you're smashing into each other, you're getting victory points every time you win a battle as an attacker, which incentivizes attacking. It does not incentivize pigeonholing. It does not incentivize standing in play. It incentivizes building up your troop, getting out there and showing them who's boss. And so you build up your faction, but you need to be managing your economy, you need to be managing your defense, you need to be managing your attacking powers, and that is where we get introduced to 3 core power tiles: the red, the blue, the white, the defense, the offense, and the economy. And then if you have the expansion, or if you have Blood and Sand, you also get introduced to the black power tiles, a bit of a catch-all, a little bit of everything. And then in Blood and Sand, we also have the sacrifice power tiles. Now, you don't necessarily play with all of them every single game. The ones you play with do depend on the player count, but it offers, basically, it just offers a smorgasbord of abilities that you get to choose from to upgrade your faction. The problem is, as you take them, other players can't take them. Some of them have doubles, most of them do not. Which means if I take that power tile to build up my faction, you don't have access to it. So you're building up an asymmetric faction, and you can't purely rely on the fact that, well, I know this combination works well together, because you may not be able to get that combination in this game. Which results in every single game feeling like a different engine, every single game feeling like a different experience, all of them being driven by the core mechanic of smash into other people, get victory points, and try to win the game. You can go to more defensively, you can go more economically, you can go more offensively. There's different pathways you can pursue, but the core gameplay of Kemet is just plain fun. That is my number 17, which brings me to my coffee's getting knocked out of the way. Give me a second while I have a little. Number 16. Number 16 is El Grande. El Grande is my number 16, and this is another one that's been around for quite some time. My number 44 last year, dropping to 16, or going up to 16, depending on how you count it. That's where El Grande is right now. And El Grande is fantastic. This is another game that, like Viticulture, I didn't try it back when it first came out. I tried El Grande years later. Years later. I want to say I tried this, I don't know how long ago, but this is an older game that I did not try when it first came out. This is an older game that I eventually picked up. I picked it up particularly because I played a game called The Walled City, Londonderry and Borderlands. I think I want to say that's the name. Designed by Daryl Andrews from Mercury Games, if I'm not mistaken. And I really liked that game. I really liked The Walled City. The problem is, my mistake, is that I played it with somebody who said, this was fun, but I'd just rather play El Grande. And so I looked into El Grande, and I got El Grande. And as much as I like The Walled City, it did eventually leave the collection because of El Grande. El Grande offers you area control in its finest, most, not purest form, but it's the granddaddy of area control games. It's been around for a long time. It is well rated, it is well loved, it is well respected, it is sought after. It is basically area control as you sit there and try to manage the king. You see what happens is every single turn, you're trying to choose a card that will give you an ability, as well as how many people you can place on the board, and both of those are impactful. Both of those are part of your decision process. But that's even a step forward. A step backwards involves you trying to bid for the turn order, because you have 13 order cards that you can use throughout the game, across the 9 rounds of the game, and you have to choose when and how to use them. Some of them will give you priority placement, but others will give you more meeples to place on the board, so it's another balance of what you're trying to go for. Which of the 5 power tiles do you think are important? What's the order that matters to you? What are other players trying to do? Who's going to be trying to screw you this round, and who are you trying to mess over? A lot of this choices and decisions around how you place your meeples on the board in El Grande. It's a 9-round game, every 3 rounds is a scoring round, and every single 3 rounds you're trying to position yourself to get as many points as possible. It is cutthroat, it is mean, and yet it is simple at the same time. Simple not in a way that is light. It is simple. It is far, far from light. It is cutthroat strategy, area control, so much expansion content in the big box over here. I haven't felt the need to dive into it because the core game gives me more than enough of an experience to dive into. But that is basically El Grande. My box over here is falling over. See, this is the problem with having... I didn't want to pick the miniatures of the box because there's too many miniatures on the sides. I don't want to tilt it over. Either way, that is El Grande, my number 16 from 44 last year. Next up, we have my number 15. Number 15, which was... This is a drop. This one's technically a drop. It's still my number 15. My 15 is Coimbra. Coimbra, another Euro game, another fantastic experience. Coimbra is from the set of designers who, I'm not going to try to butcher the names, I apologize. It's a set of designers who are responsible for a variety of games from Grande Hotel to, and there's a lot of overlap here. So there's Grande Hotel, there's other games. There's Lorenzo Magnifico. They cross designers with the Tzolk'in and Tashini and all the other, various T games and all that. But effectively, Coimbra is... How do you describe Coimbra? Coimbra is dice placement, I guess. You roll some dice, you choose the dice, you pay for the dice, and then you utilize those dice to gain guards, to gain coins, and try to manage your movement around the board, and a whole lot of interweaving parts. Every single round you're trying to gather these cards that were going to be helpful for you, because the cards will give you all these abilities and ways that it builds up your engine, the ways you're good at things, and what you have influence in, which are the 4 factions you have influence in. The factions ranging from the guards, the coins, the movement on the board, and the straight up points. Each of them will have a specialty of how they give you back things as you go higher in them. And so they're getting those influence while combining it with the abilities you have, while trying to combine the multiple scoring mechanisms of the game, results in a fantastic puzzle of how to actually play Coimbra and win. I've tried this game so many times, I have pursued so many different strategies, and each one seems viable in different ways, although there's so many fun things going on, and the interweaving mechanisms are absolutely fantastic on Coimbra. It's a game that I almost gave up on because I found the rules to be fairly messy. I don't think the game is actually that complicated, but I found the rules to be a little bit obtuse in terms of what it's trying to present. But I'm glad I persevered through it, because for me, Coimbra was my number 6 last year. It was my number 8 the year before. Right now it's my number 15. I think just because it's been played less often this past year. I may have gotten 2 or 3 plays in this past year, going up from playing it, 8 or 9 times the year before it. Coimbra is fantastic. Coimbra is amazing. Coimbra does not get played enough. I highly recommend this game. I think most people prefer Lorenzo El Magnifico. For me, Coimbra is the one that is king. Like, I like Lorenzo, not nearly as much as I like Coimbra. My number 14 is a game that's been around for a while, been around in my top 10 for 2 years now. We have a bunch of games in this list that have been in my top 10 for top 100 or whatever for 2 years. We have Kemet, we have Black Plague. Oh, whoops, I messed that up. I just gave you the next one. Whoops, whoopsie daisy. Rurik is my number 14. Not Black Plague, which is my number 13. We'll get to that shortly. Again, if you're looking at the timestamps, it's not really a surprise anyway. Rurik is my number 14, coming in at my number 12 last year, my number 6 before that. That year, when it was my number 6, it was my number 6 as a game that was new to me that year, and I played it so often and enjoyed it so much, and I do like it so much. But Rurik is a game... Is this damage? No, that's just the art. I thought it was like a little... brown over here. It's just the art. So, Rurik is a game from Stan Kodelsky, who has a variety of games that I really enjoy. His most recent one is... It's going to bother me. It starts with an R. Resurgence. It was just on Kickstarter. Really enjoyed it. Felt similar to Rurik in some of the mechanisms it's doing, or at least in the feeling the game gives, while being totally different. But Rurik, Dawn of Kiev is such an amazing experience. It is a game where, at its premise, is kind of like area control and fighting, but really to me, it's the planning board that is the core of the game, the reason to pay attention to Rurik compared to any other experience. You see, similar to Lancaster, which was higher up my top 100, similar to Lancaster, you're trying to bid for these spots that will, it's basically kind of worker placement. But it's worker placement in which the other player's advisors, if they are ranked higher than yours, or if they bribe them along the way, can effectively knock your advisors down the track. So at first you're like, I'll get to fight twice this turn, and someone's like, nope, actually, I'm going to outbid you, and I'm fighting twice this turn, and you're moving down the track, and now you're only fighting once. And so you're trying to position yourself both to get locked in early so you can get what you want, but also holding back just enough that you can override and take over from other people if they outbid you. So it's a bit of a challenge of trying to predict what you're going to be able to do this round, because you can't perfectly predict it. Are you going to be taxing? Are you going to be fighting? Are you going to be recruiting? What are you doing it? When are you doing it? In what order are you doing it? This is all a puzzle you're trying to mentally try to math out as you figure out, okay, I know what I want. I know what I want to do, but I also know I'm not going to get what you want. You can't always get what you want, but in Rurik, if you try sometimes, you can get what you need as you work more heavily towards those pathways, towards what you're trying to do to ultimately win the game. Rurik is such a puzzle of the placement, and then once you're done with that placement, you actually move to the core board where you start trying to lock in those things. Are you trying to get various resources? Are you trying to get the area control? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to win points? Are you trying to get more regions? There's 4 core scoring mechanisms in the game of both getting resources, of getting spots on the board, of different things you're trying to do across 4 rounds. There's only 4 rounds to get everything you need done. The expansion only further adds to the experience, giving you these buildings and modules and different things you can do that further add both variability and just fun aspects. My favorite expansion module is easily the buildings, the new building types, as well as the variety of buildings they give you, the special buildings you can utilize. It gives you a new puzzle every single time as far as what you're going for in the game. I adore Rurik. It is an excellent game. It slipped down to my number 14 14 from 12 and 6, but it's still a fairly decent experience. Next up, big surprise over here, my number 13 is Zombicide Black Plague. Now this one has slipped out of my top 10 from last year. Last year, there are 4 games, by the way. There are 4 games in my top 10 that have slipped out. This is one of them. So is Coimbra. Coimbra is the other one. Coimbra, we have so far, we had Food Chain Magnet that slipped down from like 7 to like 30 something, whatever it is. We have Coimbra, which slipped down from 6 down to 15. And then we have Black Plague, which slipped down from 5 to 13. Do not let that fool you. This is a fantastic game experience. Black Plague is just, it's at the end of the day, I find Black Plague to get a little bit samey the more you play it. And I've played this one a lot. The core puzzle, the core fun, the core appeal of the game experience is amazing. But it does get a little boring, even, not boring is the wrong word, this is my number 13, the highest game of all time. It has slipped down from number 5, that's all we're talking about over here. I showed this list to some of my friends, and they're like, Black Plague's 13? I'm like, that's 13. That is an insanely high position from all the games I've played. It is okay for this to not be in my top 10 of all times. Marvel Zombies, on the other hand, we'll talk about that some other time. But Black Plague, it was 5 last year, it was 5 the year before that. It held its exact same position in the spot, but for this year, it is 13. And it's basically moving heroes around the board, rolling dice, attacking zombies, rinse and repeat until you either die or accomplish your objectives, and it's about 50-50 as far as which ones happen, which is one of the reasons I love it. It is a challenge, it is a struggle. You have to tactically plan how to not get overwhelmed by the zombies. Now, to be fair, when I say it's a challenge and a puzzle, I definitely do amp up the difficulty to meet the players at the table. So this is a game where I'm not playing with the core rules. I'm often adding extra spawn points, shuffling in a whole bunch of extra abominations, and giving me the experience that's tailored for the difficulty that I want, for the difficulty that people at the table will rise up to meet that expectation or die trying. In Black Plague, the core gameplay often comes down to trying to figure out when you tackle zombies, when you knock down a door, when you try to push just a bit further to get what you want, versus when you play it safe. Play it safe for too long and zombies will rise up and overrun you. Be a little bit too adventurous and you'll find yourself opening a door and staring down 3 wolves that will rip you to shreds, and that's not a good moment in the game. Black Plague for me has been my definitive Zombicide experience. It's still outlasting 2nd Edition, outlasting Invader, outlasting... What have I played? I played 2nd Edition, Invader, I played, it's better than Green Horde for me, although they're more the same universe, so you can mix and match. Better than Undead or Alive, although I only have 1 play of Undead or Alive, and that's on TTS, so take that with a grain of salt. Black Plague for a long time has been my definitive Zombicide experience, giving me the best gameplay, although to be very clear, that's with expansion content. If you go out and buy the base game at a store, I think you're getting a good game, but not the great game that I love so much. I think you need some of those archers. The archers will give you so much extra challenge to the game. I think you need the wolves. Those 3 actions and opening a door and having wolves stare at you, that is so much fun. Having a bunch of wolves charging down a hallway, knowing full well that if you are even remotely close to them, you will be torn apart. There's so much fun to be had. And then casting the spell of protection, I can't remember what it's called, something, there's a spell of protection against wolves, casting that on your friends, Ironhide, wolves, Ironhide, I can't remember what it's called, whatever it is, casting that spell of protection so your friends can't be torn apart by the wolves, so the wolves charge at him, and using him as a beacon to attract their attention. There's so much fun, there's so much strategy, there's so much choice to be made. I know Zombicide people like to rip on it as a beer and pretzels experience, and sure, it might be for you. For me, this is a game where you have to be on your feet in order to survive. Can you be hit by some stray card that you pull that ends up being just not the card you needed and you lose the game? Yes, there is a degree of luck to it in that sense. But you have to actually play strategically to last long enough for that luck to hit you. It is such a good experience, it's such a thematic experience, it tells stories every single time I play it. And I love Black Plague. Again, with expansion content, you need the wolves, you need the archers, you need some variation in the abominations, you need some variation in the heroes. If you have the Kickstarter edition, you're good to go, but if you need a little bit more, if you're just getting the retail edition of the game. Next up, at number 12, dropping from 20, which means raising from 20, going up from 20. Last year this was my number 20, and this year it is my number 12. This is Spirit Island. And no, I still haven't played with the expansion content. I need to do so. To be fair, I actually am a step ahead of where I was last year. I've read the rules for Branch and Claw. I just haven't played it yet, but that's you know, secondary to actually reading the rules. Spirit Island is one of my favorite cooperative experiences. It is such a good journey of survival as you try to figure out how you're going to outlast your opponents. How you're going to outlast the enemy AI, the generation of units on the board as the settlers come to the island, start planting their flags, start building their buildings, start building their towns and their villages, and you, playing as these spirits, the Spirit Island as it were, are trying to take your actions to tear down your opponents. The fun of the game comes down from both your asymmetric spirits that start off with their own way that they play, as well as from the augmenting, from the developing of your your power deck. Every single few turns, you're going to be adding cards to your power deck, and those cards are going to cycle into your hand, and you give it choices, new ways to terrorize the invaders, new ways to destroy the invaders, new ways to rise up with the Dahan, the native immigrants of the island, the natives of the island, taking down the settlers. It is a ridiculously good game, and one of the things I love about Spirit Island is no matter what difficulty level you're playing at, it always feels like it's a challenge. It always feels like it's an uphill battle, but then very often you can win. For me, a game, I've always said that for me, a cooperative experience, in order for it to be ideal, it needs to feel like you could have lost when you win, and it needs to feel like you could have won when you lost. It needs to tie that line. Something about what Spirit Island does and the way it feels like they're constantly crushing you, even though you're actually slowly making your way towards your objectives, means even an easy game of Spirit Island, even a new game where you're obviously going to win, where it's clear that you will take over and terrorize the invaders, even the easiest difficulty often feels like you're being overwhelmed, and I like that feeling. I like the feeling that it's a challenge, whether or not it is. Now, granted, I've played this enough times that I do want to up the difficulty level and continuously make it an actual challenge for myself. But I like how for a new player, it can both be actually easy enough for them to win, giving them that satisfaction of winning, and yet feeling like you're being overwhelmed the whole time. I find that you get that in Atlantis Rising as well. Same idea, the idea that you feel like things are against you, and then you persevere and you win, even though it's kind of the illusion of a challenge because things were being taken away from you, but you weren't actually going to lose, at least not until you start upping that difficulty level. I love Spirit Island. I need to play with the expansions. I've heard both Branch and Claw and Jagged Earth. I've heard they add so much to the experience. I haven't played with either of them. I've read the rules for Branch and Claw. I need to play I need to sit down and actually play it. There's just too many games to be played. But Spirit Island, I mean, it has seen play this year. Hasn't seen the 10 plays I wanted to see this year. It has seen play this year. It will continue to see more play. Maybe before the year is out, I'll get a play in with Branch and Claw. Which brings me to my number 11. My number 11, I'm running out of space over here for these games. I'll put that down over here. I'm a little wary of putting them on the side like that. Excuse my bobbing head. Number 11 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is up from 27 last year, and no, I haven't even played with the expansion yet. I have the expansion, I've read the expansion. If you're sensing a trend here, yes, I read rules, and I need to play more games. I play a lot of games, I just need to play more games. Lost Ruins of Arnak coming in at 11 from 27. I think that this will be my top 10 next year, because the expansion only seems to add to what it does in a way that I wanted from the base game. So let's take a break and start and reset. Lost Ruins of Arnak is a worker placement deck building game. It's a game where you're exploring an island, trying to go up these research tracks, trying to explore the temple, getting progressively more stronger. Every single round you're adding cards to your deck, cards that will help your engine cycle and grow and become better and better. And every single round you're potentially adding artifacts to your deck and then exploring various zones in the island, dealing with the guardians. A lot of puzzles and challenges as you figure out how to, across 5 rounds, make the most of your experience to the Lost Ruins of Arnak. It's a great game as it is. It's a game that plays well at multiple player counts. It has a solo mode I still haven't dived into, but it's such a rewarding experience. It's visually engaging. I mean, the art is absolutely amazing. The components are top of the line. Everything is absolutely amazing in Lost Ruins of Arnak. The experience is fun. It gives you deck building, it gives you card play, it gives you intricate systems that work together, that weave together to result in a puzzle that you're trying to figure out how to optimize your score across those 5 rounds. And my one complaint against the Lost Ruins of Arnak was always that I wanted to do more. I wanted to get more done in the game, to the point that I frequently debated adding a 6th round to the game. I never did, but I always debated doing so. And then the expansion, Expedition Leaders, comes along, and I haven't played it yet, but the expansion basically says, hey, by the way, here's that same game that you like, and now we're going to give you leaders that let you do more. Here's a leader that gives you an extra person every single round. Here's a leader that gives you a bird, a falcon that goes around and gives you extra actions. Here's a leader that's going to let you utilize the cards you buy on the turn you buy them, keeping your engine moving faster and more furious. It doesn't take away rounds, doesn't do anything else. It does give you an alternate expedition board that can give you more stuff to go for because you're doing more. But basically they said, here's an expansion that lets you do more in the game, that lets you get more done. That's everything I wanted from Lost Ruins of Arnak. I haven't played with the expansion yet. I was hoping to get a play in before I did this, but it's always tricky. Like, do you reorder your top 10, or if whatever? It didn't have to go down that path because I haven't played with the expansion yet. I think that this will slip its way into the top 10 next year. I have to imagine it will. If it's 11 now and I love it as it is, then adding the expansion will only further add to the experience. I know people frequently compare this to Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium is ranked higher on BGG. For me, Lost Ruins of Arnak is obviously significantly higher for me. I think Dune was around like 70 or somewhere in that list. Both are fantastic games. Both are in my top 100. Lost Ruins of Arnak, to me, is a simply much more engaging and much more fulfilling experience. I love this game. It's from CGE. I'm happy there's expansion content. I am looking forward to more expansion content. Even though I haven't played the expansion content I have, it is just a ridiculously rewarding game to play through. Worker placement, deck building, do all the stuff, do it in a beautiful environment, rinse and repeat until someone wins the game, and then dive in for the next game because it's short enough that you can do that. This is my top 10. That's not my top 10. This is my numbers 20 through 11. We have one more list to go, one more. There's some mix-ups in the top 10, like I said already. There are 4 games that dropped out. We had... Wait, 4 games dropped out? What were the 4 games? We had Coimbra, we had Food Chain Magnet, we had Black Plague, and I don't know what else dropped out. I don't know. There's something else that dropped out of my top 10. I don't remember what it was. Either way, we had 4 games that dropped out of my top 10. What's the other one? I don't remember. Whatever. And then we have 4 new games to the top 10, some reordering, some re-ranking, so if you're expecting the thing that was my number 1 game of all time to be there this year, it's not, and it's not even my number 2. In either case, until next time, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and as always, have a good one.